Ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, we recap our first ever visit to the famous East Tennessee fishing show. A pipeline collapsed and is dumping millions and millions of gallons of raw sewage into one of the nation's biggest rivers. We debate and discuss whether you should reel with the same hand or different hands, depending on if you're throwing a spinning or casting setup. And as always, we dive into some fun topics in the mailbag. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by the fine folks over at the Rod Locker. And I have some very exciting news. I have a text message on my phone right now that I'm going to read from Brian, the owner of the Rod Locker, and that is that their grand opening is set and ready to go for Saturday, January 31st, this coming Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time in Evansville, Indiana. They're on 500 Congress Avenue. Go find them, look them up on the web, find directions to head over there. They are going to have an awesome grand opening, and I didn't know this. They're going to have a ton of sales that day. So I'm looking at this text from Brian, and he said, in store on January 31st from 9 to 5 p.m. He says he's also going to keep all of these sales open on Tuesday and Wednesday just for the Tackle Talk listeners. So he is going to run 15% off the entire website. Normal brand exclusions apply, but everything on the website that is able to be discounted is 15% off. And then he's going to run an extra 25% off select items, including Shimano Neck Save reels, the Rapala Jowler, that new topwater that came out about a year or two ago that's awesome, the Yamamoto Slinkos, River to Sea S waivers for all of you that write in all the time and are looking for a great budget entry-level glide bait. That's an awesome choice. The Spro Outsider, the Shimano Zodius, those will go fast, so I don't even know when you're listening to this if they'll still be available, but if they are, go grab them quick because an extra 25% off Shimano Zodiuses, and he's running an extra 25% off Jackal Drift Fry as well, a very in-demand soft plastic for all of you like kind of scopers and mid-strollers and stuff out there. So there you go. Crazy deals going on over at the Rod Locker for their grand opening. If you can go in person, if you're over there in the Indiana area or around there and you're not coming to the Columbus Fishing Expo, head over to the Rod Locker's grand opening. You will save a ton of money. It's well worth it. And for those of you listening to this that can only order online because you're too far away, well, he's got you covered with those online deals running through that following Tuesday and Wednesday. So awesome sales in person on January 31st and then online Monday, February 2nd, Tuesday, February 3rd, and Wednesday, February 4th. So mark your calendars for some great deals from the Rod Locker. And as always, be sure to use code TackleTalkJanuary. That's going to save you an extra 5% off your order. And obviously, if you're listening to this after January 31st, then you're going to want to use code TackleTalkFebruary. But save some money, support some great folks. Their grand opening is coming up on Saturday. If you're around the area, well worth it to go check out the boys at the Rod Locker. All right, our next announcement here is that if you're in the Columbus area this weekend, well, the Columbus Fishing Expo is coming up January 30th, January 31st, and February 1st. That is going to be at the Bricker Building at the Ohio Expo Center in Columbus, Ohio. I will be there all 3 days. We will have a booth. I have a crazy amount of stuff for sale for you guys where we're going to have deals galore at the Tackle Talk booth. I'm talking soft plastics in the bag, never used for stupid deals. I'm talking jigs, hard baits, brand new in the box, crazy discounts on all of that stuff. I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of baits. If you are looking for discount deals, I'm going to have you set over at our booth. We also have some coffee mugs still available. We have some shirts available. While supplies last, every single person that makes a purchase, no matter how big or how small, gets a Give 'em the Beans wristband. I have a ton of those ready to go. I've got used lithium batteries for sale at great prices, lure making supplies, a ton of stuff if you're just looking for bargains. And then, of course, I'll be at the booth hanging out. We'll be talking fishing, taking pictures, all that kind of stuff all weekend long. So much fun seeing you guys, getting to meet everybody in person. Or for some of you, this is like my only time of year to get to see you in person. So it's great to catch up, see what you've been up to. Again, come out and talk fishing and hang out. And we will have our 2 seminars going on this year as well. So Friday at 4 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m., we're going to be on stage B for both of those seminars. That is the far back right corner, the stage back there. I will be there Friday at 4 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m. We're going to be going over an updated version of the 10 golden rules of bass fishing. So I want to help you be a better angler. I want to help you enjoy your time out on the water, have a more rewarding experience out on the water, and obviously catch more fish along the way. I think those 10 golden rules that we're going to talk about do all of that. So that's always a great time as well. And if you're interested in coming out, I think I mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again just to make sure. If you go to nationalfishingexpos.com, you can use code TackleTalk26, and that's going to save you a couple bucks off your pre-purchase tickets. Dave, the owner of the expo, was kind enough to give us a code to help save some of you guys some money. So you can use that code at checkout, TackleTalk26, whether you're getting a single day or a weekend pass. Save a couple bucks. You don't have to pay full price for that ticket. Every little bit helps, and you get to skip the line on your way in as well. So it's a win-win. nationalfishingexpos.com, and you can use code TackleTalk26. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all this weekend. I've also been reliably informed that the Dark Horse Tackle Boys that are going to have a booth a couple aisles over from us are going to have 16 of those Tackle Talk Essentials boxes that we've set aside and held back for the show. Each of them will be hand-signed by yours truly, and everything in that box was curated by me as the ultimate kind of starter or essential box of baits at a great price. So we have so much in store for you this weekend. If you head on out to the National Fishing Expo's Columbus show, again, that's this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you all there. All right, next up here, let's get to some news really fast. We have a crazy story coming out of Maryland. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but I'm going to read some of this article. This is from the Washington Post, and then we'll talk really quickly about the impacts that this all has. But the article is titled, "Millions of Gallons of Sewage Spilled into the Potomac River." And then the subheadline says, "Crews are working to pump and divert the sewage, but heavy snow could impact their work." So I'll read a little bit of this here. It says, millions of gallons of untreated sewage have spilled into the Potomac River as part of a major pipeline collapse near the Capitol Beltway in Maryland. For the past 3 days, D.C. water crews have been working to install bypass pumps to contain the sewer overflow along the Clara Barton Parkway in Montgomery County after a break was reported late Monday night. A section of the 45-mile sewer line known as the Potomac Interceptor collapsed, resulting in a significant overflow, according to officials with DC Water. The Interceptor line is roughly 60 years old and carries up to 60 million gallons of water daily. Given the amount of flow that comes through this pipeline, we know that this is a significant amount of overflow, and we're talking about millions of gallons that have potentially injured the Potomac River, Sherry Lewis, a DC Water spokesperson, said in an interview Friday. DC Water officials said the break does not impact the public's drinking water because the system used for human consumption and wastewater are separate. But parts of Clara Barton Parkway have been closed so crews can work on the damaged pipe, and there may be ongoing road closures as well. Drivers should expect delays. Residents who live near the area may notice an odor from the overflow. It's not immediately known how long it will take crews to repair the pipe, but DC Water officials said that they will work through the upcoming snowstorm that's predicted to hit the region. Crews are trying to contain the sewer overflow into the Potomac River by creating a bypass. They're using heavy equipment and high-powered industrial pumps, which can move up to 7 million gallons a day to reroute the wastewater. And then there's a ton more in here too. I mean, there's like 7 pages that I won't go into, but let's take like the really basic pieces of this story. A pipe breaks that carries, quote, roughly 60 million gallons of water daily. So that's a huge deal. There's like 60 million gallons potentially of this raw sewage just flowing into the Potomac River, which is catastrophic. And then their mitigation process here says that they're trying to divert it with all this high-powered equipment or whatever, and that has the ability to, quote, move up to 7 million gallons a day. That means there's 53 million gallons here that, if everything's going right, could still be unaccounted for per day. And the last I heard on this is they were still trying to stop it. Like, this was not a situation that was over and they're in cleanup mode. They're trying to stop the flow into the river. So there is just raw sewage being pumped into the Potomac River, millions and millions and millions of gallons, like the likes of which I don't even think we know the actual impact of yet. So a couple of things here. One, That royally sucks for anybody in or around that area, anybody that fishes that water, anybody that relies on that water. Like, this is the problem with aging infrastructure. This stuff eventually is going to fail in a lot of places, and it sucks when this happens to where it impacts not only people's lives and people have to get this fixed. And I know that there's like way bigger ramifications for this, but also just detrimental to that river system. I mean, think of that. Think of the ecology of that river system now. Think of the biology that all of that just sewage upsets and upends and really just ruins for who knows how long. So this is the problem, I think, sometimes as a river angler that I get really upset with, is that the rivers do kind of become a dumping ground, and they don't get the respect that a lot of other bodies of water get. I think a lot of times because it's moving water, and if you do something to it, you can kind of just brush it under the rug and the current will carry it away, and yeah, not a big deal, because we don't see it setting there like it would be in a stagnant body of water. So I think sometimes that's what really irks me. Like, I know for a fact I can see it happen. I've seen it with my own two eyes. I have buddies that know this happens. We've talked about it constantly as river anglers around here. There are businesses around here, like in the Ohio area, that are definitely dumping things into the river that they should not be dumping. There are things that are ending up in our river that we see that we know are not supposed to be there. Now, I'm not trying to like get sued and call anybody out and end up missing someday or something because I start saying something. But all I will say is that there are definitely giant businesses around here that are abusing our river. And I can only imagine how bad that happens in other bigger rivers like the Potomac. But this wasn't even like a business or somebody dumping. This was just a failure of a pipe of actual raw sewage. And that is just a terrible situation all around. So thoughts and prayers are with anybody in that area. Obviously, we don't even know the extent of the damage yet, but that's just a crazy story that I really hadn't heard too much about until I came across this article and I really started digging into it. It sounds like a pretty bad situation down there. So hope they get that shut off pretty soon. And I hope the mitigation efforts of whatever they're trying to do to clean up and to restore goes well, because that is a tough situation there in Maryland. All right, next up here, let's get to something a little bit more fun. Let's talk about our very first trip to the East Tennessee Fishing Show, the famous expo in Knoxville, Tennessee, that I have heard about my entire life, that everybody says, hey, down there, like in the, Southern Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina type area, like a lot of people make the trip to go to this East Tennessee Fishing Show. We're lucky enough to have the Columbus Fishing Expo in our backyard. So that's the one that I've always grown up going to, and I've never needed to go anywhere else because it's an awesome expo. But as I start to branch out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I think even one of our New Year's resolutions this year was to like go to a different fishing expo, go to a different seminar series or something you've never done before, step out of that comfort zone a little bit. So I took that to heart. I made the trip 5 hours almost each way with my buddy Jeff, and we drove down to the East Tennessee Fishing Show, and we did it all in one day. We literally left here at like 4 a.m, drove down to Knoxville. We're there for probably 5-6 hours or so, and then drove straight back here. But we did get to see the whole experience. We really took our time around that place and looked through everything that we could, but also we're pretty efficient with our time, and we're able to make it back all in the same day. So we did that on Friday, tried to get down and back before, Snowmageddon hit down there, and we were able to see what all the fuss was about in East Tennessee at the Knoxville show. And I've got to tell you, it is a very, very cool show. I was not disappointed in the least. And I've heard people talk about the show forever, so I figured I was going to go down there and yes, it's cool, but is it worth the 5-hour drive? No, that's what I thought this was going to be. And I was wrong. It was definitely worth the 4.5, 5-hour drive to go down there because it was very different than the Columbus show. There were a lot of different vendors there that aren't at Columbus and vice versa. So I didn't feel like I was just seeing the expo that I'm normally used to going to in a different location. This was an awesome show. And we got to see so many people. We ran into a bunch of friends down there. That was awesome. We ran into a bunch of past guests here of Tackle Talk. Our buddy Jacob Wheeler, we saw him walking around with his son and shopping and doing all that stuff. Great to catch up with Jacob. We saw Skeet Reese. Our buddy Skeet was there with his brand new rod series that we got to kind of play around with and try out. Very cool. We ran into the bait man, Kevin Baxter. Super great to get to see him. And he's an awesome person to kind of bounce ideas off of and say, hey, what should we look at? What shouldn't we look at? What have you seen that really caught your eye? It was kind of fun to see his side of things and what he really liked and gravitated toward. We ran into Josh Plades from Clutch Swim Baits. We'll talk about them a little bit later in this segment. But it was really cool. Past guests of the show that were either there as a shopper and as an attendee, like Jacob and like Kevin, or as an exhibitor who had their own booth, like Skeet and like Josh and so many others that we ran into. A whole lot of fun. We also ran into some listeners down there. Great catching up with any of you that stopped and said hey. But the part that you guys probably care the most about right now is, Andrew, what did you actually buy? This is Tackle Talk. We want to talk about tackle. What tackle did you actually break out the wallet for and buy while you were down at the East Tennessee Fishing Show? So the first thing that I bought down there at the show was one of the only things that I actually paid full price for. It might actually be the only thing now that I think about it. And if you're going to an expo or a show, I think there's 3 reasons why as a shopper you should go to an expo. 1, because you actually get to feel and touch and lay hands on gear that you've never been able to feel before, which is especially important for like rods and reels, because I don't have enough money to buy every rod or every reel that I want to try or I want to get somewhat of an opinion on. An expo or a show is a great place to do that because you can sit there for hours and pick up hundreds or thousands of rods, hundreds of reels, and you get a better like overall experience with these items when you hear us talk about them on the show or you hear your buddy talk about them. Hey, yeah, I've picked up one of those reels before. I've felt that. I know what you're talking about there. Firsthand experience with that gear is always nice, even if it's just for like 20, 30 seconds at a time. At least you have some frame of reference for that gear moving forward. Number 2 is because you can obviously save a bunch of money at these shows because there's deals galore. If you pay cash, then, maybe wink, wink, nod, nod, or you can bundle things. I'll talk about that here in a minute. There's a lot of ways that you can save money or just look around and look for the deals. I'll talk about some of the deals I saw walking around a little bit later. Tons of awesome deals that you're not going to find anywhere else in terms of the discount that you're getting here. And then number 3, I would say, is to actually go purchase like exclusive colors or exclusive new baits that you can only get at the expo at that time. So like show colors or, new bait drops or things like that. Well, the first bait that I bought was in that 3rd category. It was a brand new bait that actually dropped from our buddy Josh over at Clutch Swim Baits, as he announced last week that the Micro Boss would be making its debut at the East Tennessee Fishing Show. So for those of you that aren't super hip to the Clutch Swim Bait line and their world and all the baits that they make, they're the folks that make the Clutch Eco, which is probably the best glide bait under $100 that I've used to date. I think in a world where budget and glide bait are sort of oxymorons sometimes, that Clutch Eco really blends those 2 worlds pretty nicely. But he has those Boss glide baits that he's had for a long time. Those are almost, I think, 10 inches. They're huge, over 4 ounces, a real beast of a glide bait. A little too big for what I do around here. I like some big baits now and then, but a full-size Boss is a little bit out of my realm. A very cool bait to look at, a cool bait to watch in the water, just not something I'm going to really throw around here. But then came the smaller version, the 7.25-inch, 2.1-ounce Baby Boss that he released, I don't know, probably about a year ago. It might have actually, I think it actually dropped at the East Tennessee show last year. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely did, because I asked the bait man, Kevin Baxter, to actually pick me one up and I Venmo'd him. I remember that now. So yes, the Baby Boss actually dropped last year at the East Tennessee Fishing Show. And since then, that Baby Boss that I bought, it's just in a plain bone color, did work for me this year. It's a really fun, a little bit more aggressive chop to it, a really taller profiled bait. It's a very cool glide that definitely has a place in my box moving forward. Well, now he dropped the Micro Boss, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically a Boss or a Baby Boss, but put in an even smaller profile. And I think the actual stats on this, like from Josh, I think it's listed as a 5.5-inch, 1.25 ounce bait on paper, but I actually put mine on a catch board and a digital scale just for fun to have some exact measurements. And the overall length, I know that glide baits are kind of measured in weird ways, and I think the listing weight a lot of times is kind of like from the nose of the bait to about the middle of the tail. But if you take this Micro Boss and you put it like on a catch board and you put that line tie all the way up against that wall, you're going to get to about 6.25 inches from line tie all the way to the end of the tail, that brush tail. If you go to the very top corner, it's going to hit about 6.25 inches. Now, if you go from the line tie to where the resin on the back of that tail ends, you're more like 4.75 inches. So that 5.5 listed length is somewhere in the middle there. and it weighs in on the digital scale at 1.38 ounces. So give or take, I think 0.18 ounces that would be, if my math is right, for the hooks and the O-rings versus the listed weight of this bait. So overall, a very small, awesome looking bait. It's light, it's skinny. They incorporated that same sort of paint deal that they do with the Ecos, or some variation of it, I guess, where it's not really just painted on the outside, it's more baked into that resin. So you can't really chip it if you hit it on a bridge pylon or rocks or something like I do with a lot of my baits, and then the paint chips immediately. This is a lot more durable. You're not going to chip that paint off. I think I paid $120 for mine. That's list price. Obviously, didn't do a discount or anything on that. Just full price bait because it's a brand new bait that I wanted. And it was probably my number one target going into the Tennessee show, was like, hey, I want to go over, I want to pick up one of these micro bosses, and then everything else from there is kind of gravy. And I think I was just so excited about it because it's such a small, light bait that I'll be able to throw this on a lot of different combos, a lot of different rods that I normally would with like a 2-ounce bait and up, that you really have to have a heavier rod to handle that. At 1.25-ish ounces, you can throw that on a lot of stuff. I could throw that on my cranking setup. I could throw that on medium heavy if I had to. It's a small enough bait that I can play around with a lot of different combos that are usually out of the question. The next 3 things that I bought were all from one vendor. I think it was McKee Outdoors, if I remember right. I bought a rod, a glide bait, and a topwater bait. And all 3 of those things were on my wish list that I've desperately wanted to try for a little bit now. So the first, the rod that I bought was, you guessed it, the brand spanking new Shimano Celis rods. We talked about those rods a few weeks ago, the newest revamp from Shimano that sort of takes that forgotten about Celis rod in the line, and they took away the, bright blue rod with the foam handles, and they really completely redid it from the ground up. And it came out very sharp, like a very clean looking, almost like a budget version of the Shimano X Pride. That's kind of what it reminds me of when I look at it, because it's a cork handle, black EVA butt section, an all black rod, that kind of black, smooth, wrapped midsection. Then it tapers up to like a textured matte black for the top half of that rod. A really stunning looking rod at a silly price point of $64.99. And when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, I actually think in our first conversation, I had that price wrong. I was clocking that rod in at $79.99. I think when I first mentioned it on the show. No, it's not $79.99. It's only $64.99. So even cheaper than I thought it was. And when I saw it on the rack, I had to buy one. So when I buy rods to try, a lot of times I buy like a 7 or a 7.3 medium heavy fast casting rod just so I can compare apples to apples. But with this rod, I already had a lot of 7.3, 7.1, 7-foot medium heavy fasts. And I wanted something that instead would like fill a hole in my lineup for me. And so what I actually bought was the 7-foot medium light spinning rod. And I can already tell a lot of people when they looked at this rod, and a lot of people I showed this rod at the expo, immediately thought like minnow shaking rod. Like this rod feels like it's going to be a scoper's rod. But to me, the type of fishing that I like to do, when I picked up this rod, it feels like a pretty universal finesse rod. Like I think you could do exposed Ned rigs on this rod. You could do drop shots. You could do light top waters, small poppers, and, little head and Zara puppies and stuff like that. You could do a light single swimmer. You could do wacky rigs, all around finesse. I think this rod could handle pretty well. So I'm really excited to go out there and start throwing this rod. And I can tell you, at least right now, I haven't got it out on the water yet. Obviously just got it like a day or two ago, but it feels as nice as I hoped they would. And at $65 is crazy. But the true test is yet to come, because can this rod handle the stress of me, Andrew Hayes, fishing it? I don't know about that, because durability could very well be this rod's Achilles heel. It could be its downfall. I mean, at the price, you almost expect it, right? A $65 rod. A lot of people are going to say that that's almost even a disposable rod price point for a lot of people. But for me, I'm really hoping this becomes like a multi-year fish hard rod, because if so, what a story for the Shimano Celis, and what a great recommendation for people who don't have $250, $350, $400 nowadays for these crazy like upscale rods. $65 is a price point that a lot of these companies should be trying to hit. Kudos to Shimano for actually putting out a great looking rod, a great feeling rod, and hopefully, I don't know for sure, but a great performing rod. We'll see. But I had to grab that new Shimano Celis. The next thing that I grabbed at that same retailer was a Rapala Claptail 110, which retails for $21.99. If you remember back to our iCast episode from last year, we sat down with Jacob Wheeler and really talked about this Claptail, about where the inspiration for it came, the sound profile of it. That's your really crazy thing about this, is that it's basically a whopper plopper type bait, but that tail that rotates on the back is kind of dinging this almost Indiana blade back there. It's a metal blade. It kind of looks like the blade that would be on like a Mepps or something, just like a stamped Indiana blade or whatever you call those. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. As a musky guy, this reminds me of a flap tail, where you've got these two kind of clanging pieces of metal hitting each other as this top water is going through the water. So hopefully this works for bass too. I'm excited to try this out. I've talked about it before. I think our fish around here kind of got hip to the regular whopper ploppers, and that's why I switched to the Chapo not too long ago. And maybe this is kind of next up in the evolution of prop baits to keep these fish on their toes. I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited to throw it. And then the third thing that I bought from that same retailer was the Shimano Gravitator. Now, this is the Gravitator 220 SS, the slow sink model. Normally a $50 bait. This is a single jointed glide bait, but it's a plastic glide bait. This is not a resin bait by any means. This is a mass-produced, big 2 3/8 ounce glide bait. But it has some cool features in it that I really wanted to try out and see if they're just marketing mumbo jumbo or whether they really actually matter. The first is what they call Arma Boost, which basically means that this has a bigger range of motion. So it kind of folds over on itself when you cast it, supposedly makes it cast farther because it doesn't stay so, straight, and it doesn't catch as much wind and stuff. It really kind of folds over to be more of like a ball or a rock when you actually cast it out. So interested to see how that goes. It also has what they call flash boost in it. This is the coolest part, I think, about this bait. It's got this little metal or kind of like reflective flashing piece in the middle where when you move this bait and then you stop it and you hold it still, that little piece keeps like going back and forth and flashing. So it's got this constant kind of flash and reflection to it. And only certain colors of this bait have it. I know they've done it before in jerk baits and other stuff too, but this is a Shimano kind of, quote unquote technology, is that flash boost. So interested to try that out and see if it gets fish to maybe commit when this bait is killed and actually sitting still, because it's still giving off a flash even without moving. But that was the third bait that I bought from that same retailer. So I bought that Shimano Celis rod, which retails for $65. I bought the Rapala Claptail 110, which retails for $22, and the Shimano Gravitator that retails for $50. So normally I would have paid like $140 total for those three things, but I was able to bundle these at that retailer and they gave me a deal of $110. So a little over 20% off there. I think that's a pretty good deal. 3 pieces of gear that I had on my wish list that I've wanted to try. Pretty good discount on them, so I will take that. I'm happy with that purchase. The next booth that I stopped at that I actually bought something was from another company that I've had my eye on for a couple years now, and that's Accent Fishing. And Accent Fishing used to be out of Indiana. I think they've since moved, but what I have heard about them is they're a great family-owned business and that they make some killer spinner baits and some killer buzz baits. They're basically like wire bait specialists. So the gentleman that owns it, I believe, grew up around Jacob Wheeler is what he was saying, because Jacob has numerous signature baits with Accent. That's where I heard of them originally years and years ago. And I know that he's thrown their wire baits for a long time. So I've always been kind of, whatever you want to call it, accent curious maybe, but I finally stopped by. I got to meet the owners. Brett was awesome, very nice to talk to for a few minutes. And then I picked up 2 of their spinner baits to try out. One of which is called their River Special. I got the double willow with some cool fluting on the blades that I liked. I went double nickel for my blade colors on that one. And then the other one that I bought was their Subtle series, which is basically like a compact version of their other baits. So a little bit smaller profile. And I got that gold willow with like a silver Colorado combo, like the 1-2 punch there of a small Colorado, big willow blade. And I got one in gold and one in silver. And then both of those were skirted in their color that they call Purple Crush, which is a really nice kind of like subtle purple kind of hollow pattern and real iridescent color looking. If you hit it in different lights, it almost looks a little blue. And then it has a real small touch of chartreuse in the tail too, and then some white. So 2 very cool spinner baits. I think those retail normally for like $8 or $9. And I think I bought each of those for about $7.50. The next purchase that I made was from an actual local tackle shop that's about an hour south of me here in Ohio, and it was Hamilton Bait and Tackle. They were set up there at this show. They will also be set up at the Columbus show next weekend. They had some great deals at their booth too, but one of the deals they had was on something I desperately need, which is rod sleeves. And it's so hard to find good, affordable, all black rod sleeves nowadays. Everything is like some stupid color and they're $8 or $10 each. And I just see that and I'm like, no, thank you. But they actually had at their booth name brand rod gloves, and they had them for buy one, get one free. So I think I picked up 4 rod gloves and I got them in all black, which is nice. So they match all my other ones. I think I paid $15 for the 4 of them. So that breaks down to about $3.75 a piece. Done. I'll take that all day long, and saved quite a bit of money on something that is not like the most fun thing to buy, but something I definitely needed. And I can never make myself pay, if I would have bought these under normal circumstances, like I'm not paying $8 to $10 a piece for those things. $3.75, sure, I can do that. And then the last bait purchase anyway that I made was at a booth that was selling a bunch of discount, kind of like, new old stock and, things that were unopened. And I found a bin of Lucky Crafts. And most of it was stuff that I didn't really need. It was a lot of lightning pointers, which are the kind of like 110 style jerk baits that they make. They're not like the fatter, wider body of like the regular pointers. But I did find one of those lightning pointer 100 SPs for $8 in my favorite color that Lucky Craft makes, which is Ghost Minnow. So I had to give at least one of them a new home, and, it was sitting in the box and looking at me with puppy dog eyes. So I thought, all right, I can at least take one of these home and give it a good new home. So there is a new Lucky Craft Ghost Minnow Lightning Pointer 100 SP that will be heading into my box pretty soon. I got it for $8. Like I said, normally about a $10 bait. Not a huge savings, but 20% off is 20% off. I'll take it. And then the last purchase that I made was a little bit of a sneakier one. It was kind of under the table from one of the vendors at the show that shall not be named on the condition of anonymity for selling me this piece. But they sold me 2 custom pieces that I can use to retrofit part of my kayak setup that's been giving me headaches for years. And I only bring this up not to say like, oh, I bought something that I can't tell you what it was, or I can't tell you who gave it to me or whatever. But I do this to show you the importance of actually stopping and talking to people at these booths. Like, not just blowing by everything or not engaging with the business owners at all when they try and talk to you. Talk to them. That's what you're there for, right? You're there to have conversations, to really get to know people, because you never know what that person might be able to help you with. They might have great advice on something. They might have a product you've never heard of before, a suggestion, some tips. And in this case, they had a booth that was kind of along these lines, and I was complaining about something that I always have to deal with part of my kayak setup. And they basically said, hey, if you don't tell anybody, like, I know a sneaky option to help you fix that. And I said, okay, I'm all ears. Like, tell me what it is. And they suggested a piece or 2 of an addition that I could add to a certain part of my kayak. And I was like, that is actually a really good idea. And he said, hey, I might actually have some in the bag. Hold on a second. So he went into his bag, looked, he found 2 of them, and he was like, hey, give me $10 for the cost of them to cover the cost, and I'll give these to you. And I did. I gave him $10, and it's worth every penny if this ends up working out. So go and talk to these people. You never know. This was a booth that I did not expect to buy something at. And just because I had a pleasant conversation with the owner of that company, he actually had a pretty good suggestion, and I think he might alleviate a headache that I have with my current kayak setup. I'll let you guys know down the road if it ends up working. But that's the total that we spent at the East Tennessee Fishing Show. So I walked away with a brand new Shimano Sella spinning rod, a brand new Clutch Micro Boss glide bait, a Rapala Claptail 110, a Shimano Gravitator glide bait, a Lucky Craft Lightning Pointer, 2 accent spinner baits, 4 rod sleeves, and a kayak rigging component that I kind of bought under the table. All of that for a grand total of $278. So again, I will take that. I saved quite a bit of money on everything that I bought for the most part, and I also didn't go overboard. That is one of the many reasons why you should attend your local area expos and shows. There's new gear there, and there's great deals. I saw so many deals that I had to control myself on. I said, hey, do not go crazy on this. You also have another expo coming up next weekend, so don't spend like an arm and a leg here. Please, Andrew, like, exercise some caution. And I got out of there only spending $278. I'm happy with that, but some of the deals that I saw that I just almost could not pass up, or I know there were people walking around that if they knew what they were looking at, they were like, oh my God, this is a crazy deal. Like somebody had the Spro KGB Chad Chads and they were $60, but buy one, get one free. Those are normally $65 baits on their own, and you could get two for $60. So $30 a piece for a $65 bait is a stupid deal. I also saw bulk bags of Yum Christy Craws, which you guys know I love. They had 25 counts of Christy Craws for $5. To put that in perspective, usually an 8-pack is $4. So you could get over 3 times as many for $1 more than you can normally buy 8 for. Screaming deal. I literally had like 4 bags in my hand. I had to be like, no, Andrew, you have a bunch at home already. You don't need to buy these. But I was ready to like empty the box with all of those and take them all home at $5 a bag with a 25 count in it. I also saw someone else doing buy one, get one free Fenwicks. So the Fenwick Eagle, the Fenwick Elite, the Fenwick HMG, I think they were all like buy one, get one free. So that means you could have got Fenwick Eagles for like $60 each. Again, mind-blowing deals if you just sifted through and looked around at this expo. There were so many that you just couldn't keep track of them all. But kudos and shout out to the vendors because they brought the deals at this show. They had great setups. It was an awesome experience, and I will most definitely go back in the future. It is worth the trip for me for that 4.5 to 5 hours to go down to a brand new expo that I'd never got to experience before. And if you want to have an experience like that, well, the time is not up because this weekend you can do that same thing in Columbus, Ohio. All right, next up here, we are about to jump into this week's fishing poll, and we will get to that in just a minute. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Humminbird. Humminbird has all kinds of fishing electronics, no matter what you're looking for. If you have like a 10-foot kayak and you just want like the most basic 2D sonar to just know what you're looking at in terms of depth, they got you covered all the way up to like their brand new Mega Live 2. Run that into the brand new Explorer units and you have an awesome setup. Like everything in between you can find with Humminbird. They have awesome technology in some of those units. You're talking about things like target lock. They have their whole Mega line products. We just mentioned Mega Live 2, great forward-facing sonar where you don't have to worry about carrying around a black box with you like you have to do with some other options out there. That's a huge deal for me as a kayak guy, being a lot more portable and not having that extra giant piece that I have to mount somewhere is great. Also, those Explorer units are awesome. The touch screen, the waypoint management, coming with LakeMaster and Chartmaster maps included. Just an awesome plug-and-play unit. So like I've said before, if you're looking for big or small, you want simple or cutting edge, see for yourself why Humminbird is simply, clearly better. To learn more, you can head over to www.humminbird.com. The Tackle Talk podcast is also brought to you by Minn Kota. And Minn Kota has a giant line of freshwater trolling motors, saltwater trolling motors. If you want something that's just like a simple plug in, point and go, they've got you covered. If you want something that's, remote control, spot lock, GPS integrated, the whole 9 yards, they got you covered there too. You can also find all kinds of voltages depending on what batteries you have. They have 12-volt trolling motors, 24-volt trolling motors, 36-volt trolling motors. You can take advantage of their one-boat network, which is pretty darn slick. A lot of them have spot locks, so you can just hit that button, stay there, and actually focus on the fishing a lot more than working your trolling motor back and forth. Advanced GPS, sonar integration, a whole lot more. So for more information about the full line of Minn Kota trolling motors, shallow water anchors, and everything that Minn Kota has to offer, you can head over to www.minnkotamotors.com. All right, everybody, let's get into this week's fishing poll presented by Humminbird.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Fishing Poll. Brought to you by Humminbird. Explore more at humminbird.com.
All right, everybody. In this week's fishing poll, we asked you a very simple question. Do you reel with the same hand for both your spinning and your casting setups? Now, I don't want to debate this per se as much as I just want to explore it and tell you why I think the way that I do. Now, this is an age-old question. Which hand should you reel with? And for the sake of this argument today, let's say that you're right-handed, because I know the majority of the population is right-handed, so we'll use that as our example. If you're a lefty, just flip-flop everything that we're about to talk about. But for me, I am a right-handed person for most things, and I reel both my casting and my spinning rods with my right hand. So my answer to this question would have been yes, I do use the same hand for both. There are no exceptions for me. I always reel with my right hand. And what really bugs me about this topic is I feel like the norm is to reel with your right hand on a casting reel and then reel with your left hand on a spinning reel if you're right-handed. And to that, I just say, why? Seriously, why? Give me one good reason why I should reel with a different hand and completely reverse my mechanics and my instincts depending on whether I click a button to cast or whether I flip a bail open to cast. I don't understand why it makes sense to switch one versus the other. And the common argument, I think, for spinning rods anyway, is, well, why would you cast with your right hand and then switch hands to start reeling with your right hand and put your rod in your left hand? And to that argument, I just kind of say, well, I don't know, like I do it with a casting reel and that doesn't seem to bother anybody. So why does it matter if I do it with a spinning reel? Like when I cast a chatterbait with a casting rod, I click the thumb bar with my right hand, I grip the reel with my right hand, I grip the butt section of the rod with my left hand, and I cast. Then while it's in the air, I switch that reel over into the palm of my left hand and I start reeling with my right. And that's considered completely normal in most situations. But then if I do that same dang thing with a 7-foot medium spinning rod, now all of a sudden I'm a weirdo. I do not get it. I know I've probably got on my soapbox about this before, but gosh darn it, I'm going to do it again because I just don't understand the argument. Like, we must stop the right-handed shame for spinning reels. Embrace it, brother. It is the way. It is how you should do it, in my opinion, because at least it lets me keep my mechanics consistent from rod to rod, and I'm not switching it up so much. Now, the only people that I think have a leg to stand on in terms of an argument here would be like right-handed people that actually used a left-handed bait caster, because then you're probably the superior one, because you can say that the rod stays in your dominant hand at all times, and then your non-dominant hand just reels, even during the cast, right? You never have to switch anything, and the control is always with your dominant hand. So like when you're working a spook or something, your dominant hand is working the rod, your less coordinated hand, your left hand, is just doing a circle motion to pick up slack. I completely get that. And if that person wants to call me weird for reeling with my right hand in all situations and wants to argue that because I'm right-handed, I should actually keep the rod in my right hand at all times, both casting and spinning, I'm open to that argument. I think you actually probably have a pretty good case because it's almost like baseball, right? In baseball, I think technically if you're a right-handed person and you wanted to maximize the power and the control of your dominant hand and your dominant arm, then you would probably actually bat like we consider left-handed right now, because then your dominant hand is your inside hand and your inside arm and doing most of the bat control and movement, and that's where a lot of the strength comes from. So that makes sense to me. So I think the argument is interesting, but what I don't find interesting is someone just saying to me, oh, you reel a spinning rod with your right hand, that's weird. And then when I ask why, they just go, I don't know, it's just weird. That's just not how most people do it. No, give me a reason why I should abandon consistency in my mechanics and reel sometimes with my right hand and sometimes with my left hand. That doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I positioned this week's question not as, do you reel with your right or left hand, but do you reel with the same hand for both casting and spinning? Right or left, I don't care, but do you keep it consistent? I think that's a much more interesting statistic to me, because I will argue that if you say no, you don't reel with the same hand for both, then I personally would say that I think you should probably at least consider it, whatever hand that means. I'm not trying to tell you right versus left, just keep it the same for both. But let's see what you guys said. This week's fishing poll was ran exclusively through the Tackle Talk website, so I know it was all of you, the listeners, that were actually answering this. And as we open this up here, this is actually surprising, I think. 68% of you said yes, you reel with the same hand for both spinning and casting rods. I thought that would be a lot lower, I'll be honest. I feel like the norm, at least for me and my friends around here and people that I fish with, is to reel with your right hand with a casting reel and then reel with your left hand with a spinning reel. But 68% of you said yes, you reel with the same hand, right or left, it doesn't matter, for your casting and your spinning setups. That's interesting stuff right there. If I want to try and read between the lines and I want to try and get something even more out of this, this also probably tells me that left-handed spinning reels are getting more and more popular because a lot of you are probably right-handed, which means I'm guessing a lot of you are starting to reel with your left hand. As more and more people do adapt this philosophy of why am I switching hands to cast and reel, if I have like a casting rod, and I'm right-handed, so I should learn to just reel left-handed, and that's more efficient, or vice versa. That's interesting too. And again, I can get behind that argument because now you're saying, okay, I probably did cast with my right hand, reel with my left hand with my spinning reel. Why don't I do that with my casting reel? It's more efficient. I understand that. And then at the end of the day, you are reeling all the time with your left hand. That would be interesting to ask like a tackle retailer if they're seeing upticks in left-handed reels, because I would bet over the past couple of years, it's got to be going up. More and more people are starting to get hip to this. Not only why am I reeling with two different hands, spinning and casting, but also why am I not just always reeling with my left hand because it's more efficient. So that's very cool. Thank you all for participating in this week's fishing poll. Everybody, if you're listening to this right now as the episode is out, that means you can head over right now to www.tackletalkpodcast.com/fishing poll, or you can just go to our website and click the link at the top of the page, and you can vote and participate in next week's poll. All right, everybody. And finally, we're about to crack open the mailbag here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Amped Outdoors. And I have my 2 Amped batteries right beside me on the desk right now because I had them inside the other day playing with the Amped Bluetooth app. And I got to tell you, it is awesome. I don't know how I ever survived without having Bluetooth connectivity to my kayak motor battery. Like, it's a 50 amp hour, which means all those bigger batteries from Amped come equipped with that Bluetooth connectivity already in it. And I can pull up my app right now. I literally have it. Let's do it. I will pull up my Amped app, and I can see that I have 100% of my battery life still left. I charged it last night, so it's 100% right now. I can see all kinds of stats and details, and I can even see how many charging cycles I've gone through during the life of this battery. So much peace of mind by being able to connect to it and know, hey, 1, do I need to charge this before I go out tomorrow? 2, if I'm out on the water and it's the middle of the day, how much of my battery have I used? I used to just fly blind, and now I know exactly how much battery I have left. That is peace of mind that is like priceless to me, especially as I put myself in these river situations where, like, if my battery does die, I'm not in a good spot. Also, because it's freezing cold outside, I can charge this in the garage right now because it has heated charging. Very cool features in those Amped batteries. You also get the highest quality components. You get waterproof casing. Like I said, all those 50 amp hour and up, you get heated charging included, and you get a 10-year no gimmick warranty, world-class customer support in Hudson, Wisconsin from a family-owned company that are great folks making awesome batteries. So you can head over to www.ampedoutdoors.com today and power your passion with Amped.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors, your source for premium, affordable lithium batteries.
All right, our first question here is from Matt S., who says, "Hi, Andrew, you mentioned this week that you went down a path of acquiring a rod for each technique, but then realized that it's not sustainable and leaves you second-guessing yourself. Well, you opened my eyes, and I'm heading down the same path now and already see the issue. I'm very interested in your idea of shrinking to a more versatile 5 or 6 rods to cover almost everything. A well-defined loadout, if you will. Have you ever tried to hash out how to maximize the ideal set of 5 or 6 rods to cover everything? I don't know if you piqued my OCD or if it's just the striving for maximum efficiency, but I would love to hear the path that you go down to try and do that. I will be doing this myself to try and limit the number of combos needed. It would be incredible if you have only 5 or 6 rods on the deck of your boat versus ending up with a dozen on the deck after a tough day. Thank you and well done on the podcast. The quality and consistency of your podcast is top notch. Matt S." Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that a ton. And you are actually in luck, my friend. There are a couple different places where you can find the exact thing you're looking for from us here at Tackle Talk. We did this episode a long time ago. That's probably one of the, I'd say it's probably still one of the top 5 or 10 most popular episodes that we've ever done. And it was the only 5 rod and reel combos that you need to go bass fishing, where I did exactly what you said. I went and put together my top 5 combos that can probably do 95% of the fishing that I do as a regular bass angler, and I still abide by that today. If you look in my garage, I really have like 5 or 6 combos that I use 90 to 95% of the time. So this episode still holds up. So you can actually go and look it up. I just Googled it to try and see the date that we released this episode. It looks like it was Christmas Day 2019. Jeez. So that was like 6 years ago at this point. It is called The Only 5 Rod and Reel Combos You Need. And that is still the 5 combos that I abide by to this day. So go look that episode up. It has everything in it that you're looking for. Hopefully it helps. The next question here is from Jack, who says, what time of year do things really start to kick off for you fishing-wise? This winter storm has me counting the days till March. Jack, there is no start time for us because there is no end time for us. There is no time where it kicks off versus doesn't kick off. We are fishing 12 months out of the year. I have enough gear with me to go out in the dead of winter. I have the gear to go out in the middle of summer and everything in between. We don't stop. We don't winterize the kayaks. We don't put them away. We are out there fishing. Luckily, we have a lot of moving water around here, which doesn't freeze as easy as our lakes and our ponds do, which means it stays open or at least partially open for a lot of the year. So yeah, there is no start and stop time for us. Now, I would say if you say really kick off, maybe I could rephrase that to like, what is the best time of year or what's your favorite time of year or when do you do best? I would say fall is definitely like when I do best. But yeah, there really is no kickoff or end for me. I guess the only thing we really do have to watch out for is around here we're in a really low-lying area. So in early spring, a lot of our water is unfishable for a little bit because we get really bad flooding being at the low part of this whole watershed. So that's really about the only time we're out of commission. The next question here is from Steve, and he says, I really enjoy your podcast. In a past fishing poll, you asked if you had ever purchased a $300 rod. I have not. However, my next rod will be a Shimano X Pride B 610 medium moderate fast. I know you really like this rod for jerkbaits and topwaters. Would it also make a good crankbait rod? Thank you. Yeah, so I do love that rod. I have that rod. It is the best jerkbait rod that I have ever used. I don't say that lightly. It is my favorite jerkbait rod that I have ever used to date. I have bought rods and tried rods to try and supplant that and to try and see if they can take it over. Nothing has done it yet. So that 610 medium moderate fast, the Shimano X Pride B, rest assured you're getting an awesome rod. As far as can it handle crankbaits though, I don't know. I would say it can definitely handle like a 1.0 square bill, maybe even a 1.5. Maybe if you're going like a DT4 or something, but I wouldn't throw anything that dives more than like 6 feet on it probably. I think you're going to get really overpowered really fast if you start trying to throw something that dives like 8 foot or more. I wouldn't crank with this rod, no. You can do really light, really shallow square bill or shallow divers, I guess, but it's not my favorite for that for sure. I like a little bit beefier rod than this is. This is really my jerkbait rod first and foremost, an awesome jerkbait rod, but then it can also wear some hats as a nice topwater rod, you know, spooks, poppers, things like that. It handles prop baits pretty well. It also throws like small spinner baits really well. So think like a Battle Baits minigun or something like that. That's a bait that I love throwing on the setup too. But crankbaits are kind of iffy. It depends on how deep and how big. But overall, I would say no, I probably wouldn't crank with this rod. Next question is from Spencer, who says, what's up, Andrew? In last week's episode, you talked a little bit about wooden crankbaits. I love fishing, and I also build wooden fishing lures as a hobby. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on wooden fishing lures. Thanks for the time, Spencer. Yeah, Spencer, man, it's cool. I think that's probably like first thing comes to mind is that wooden baits are objectively cool. They're cooler than plastic baits because they're actually handmade and they're coming from something that feels a little bit more timeless, a little bit more classic. I also love, like, if you're actually hand making wood baits and, you know, whether you're turning them on a lathe or you're carving them or you've got them on like, you know, like some of the balsa guys do, like those replicator machines or something, like that's a workable piece of art. And then when you factor in, you know, the coating process and the painting and everything and really making something out of a block of wood, I think is just cool. I've talked about this before, but I think sometimes in fishing, it just scratches our caveman brain a little bit. And just me as like a, you know, red-blooded dude, I think it's cool to take a piece of wood and make that into something that catches a fish. I think that is like something ingrained in our DNA as old as time to like provide and to hunt and to be resourceful and kind of live off the land a little bit. I think there's probably some sort of little, you know, tinge of something in there that, like I said, itch that just scratches. I think it's really cool. The next question is from Shannon, who says, just want to start off and thank you for the hard work that you put in on the podcast. I absolutely enjoy every new episode when they come out, and I've been trying to do all of the polls as well. But my question to you is, what is your ratio of bank and wade fishing versus kayak fishing? I know you're a big kayak fisherman, but often talk about beating the bank or wading. I'm just curious, as a bank fisherman only that doesn't have a way to transport a kayak or boat. Thanks in advance and keep up the good work, Shannon. Well, thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. I don't know. My breakdown of kayak versus wading, I think it's more like seasonal based. I think it has to do with, water temp, with outside temp. Like, I don't really enjoy wading in waders. I enjoy getting in the water like a kid and just having like boots or old shoes on and then getting like, chest deep in water and walking through the river or the creek or whatever it is. Like, that's what I like to do. I like to wet wade. I don't really love to wade with, I'm not the guy that's got the big Orvis waders on and going out in the wintertime or whatever and wading around. Like, that's not me most of the time. I would much rather get in with just shorts on, just some like beat up shoes or boots and wet wade it. And I know that like a lot of people, especially where I fish, think that's pretty gross. And I won't disagree with you. I won't try and fight those allegations. It can be a very gross thing, but there's just something about being in the water. I want to be walking in the water. I'm my own depth finder. I'm my own side imaging. I'm using my feet to feel, what's going on down there. And yeah, you take a step and there's a drop off. Well, okay, guess what? There's a 2-foot drop there, and that's probably going to hold fish the next time that I come through. I like going out and like kind of balancing that feeling of being a kid tromping through the creek and having a successful day fishing and exploring new places. It's just a whole different experience than being in a vessel versus being in the water. So yeah, I don't know. I would say if I had to break it down, it's probably 20% wading, 80% kayak would be my guess, just because a lot of times a year, I'm not going to go out and wade 6 months of the year because it's pretty darn cold for those 6 months. And then the other 6 months, I'm probably half and half. So when you average it out, I guess it's probably 20 or 30% wading. The rest is kayak angling. But in a perfect world, if we had like great weather all year long, I would wade so much more because it's so much fun catching fish when you're in the water with the fish. All right, next question here is from Adam, who says, "Hey man, I'm just curious about the differences between spinning reels and casting reels. What are their pros and cons, and what baits and techniques do you lean toward for each or the other?" You also have a great question that hopefully you're going to have a really good answer here too, and that is that we did a full episode on this as well. So if you go back and you listen to the episode from January 26, 2021, that episode is quite literally titled Spinning Reels versus Bait Casters. And we went in depth in this exact question about when you should choose each one, what are the pros and cons, which ones do you lean toward more often versus others. That is a great episode as well. So you've got like almost 30 minutes worth of commentary from us on which one you should choose. I don't think I'll be able to do it as well in an answer to your question here as it would be to listen to that episode. So yeah, again, that was January 26th, 2021. We released that episode, Spinning Reels versus Bait Casters. Go back and listen to that. If you still have questions, shoot me an email or a DM or something. Be happy to help, but I think that'll probably answer most of your question. The next one is from Trace. I hope I'm saying that right. Tres. I'm sorry, I know I butchered that, but if I say both, maybe I got one of them right. Trace or Tress says, "Hey Andrew, love your podcast and am grateful for all of the big time energy and effort you put into your work on our behalf. Here's my question. To further piggyback off and shift to more budget gear due to price increases, what pros are using rods, reels, baits, and line that are not necessarily their sponsors' top of the line products? I'm close to Alton Jones Jr. here in Texas where we live, and he swears by, and I do too, the $99 Cast King Skeet Reese Icon reels. He also had their top of the line MGTI, which is a $300 or $400 reel on the boat too, but 80% of his setups are $99 Icon reels. Recently, Jacob Wheeler has been using the Skeet Reese Icon bait caster on the MLF tour on his deck too. I think it would be cool to do a deep dive or to snoop around on some pros' Instagrams to see who's using mid-tier or even budget rods and reels for their everyday tournament grind. That could clue us in on what pros see as actual bang for the buck setups versus fishing the priciest combos that their suppliers make. Thank you so kindly, brother. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for writing in. Yeah, that is interesting. Every angler is a little bit different. I also don't want to be too cynical and don't want to go down this route, but you also have to remember that this is a business and there's a really good chance that the sponsor dictates or maybe very strongly recommends what gear that they would like that angler to push. So that doesn't always mean the most expensive gear that supplier makes. That could be just a piece of gear that they're really trying to get out there in the market. That could be Cast King saying, hey, yes, the MGTI is awesome. It's $300, $400 though. Most people aren't going to buy that. We'd really like people who are watching MLF to see people throwing the $99 Skeet Reese icon. We think that will sell better. So if you guys, our pro staff or whoever's out there using our reels, if you could make an effort to use that Cast King Skeet Reese reel, that would be great. That might happen. It also might be that, hey, the Skeet Reese icon reel is more noticeable than other reels. It's got like, the yellow accents on it. So when you see that, you actually know that it's a Skeet Reese icon and not something else. So maybe they would like anglers to use a little bit more recognizable gear because that helps the sponsor out a little bit too. I don't know. That's like cynical part of my brain. The other part goes, well, maybe they get some sort of gear allowance. So like, hey, every quarter you can spend $3,000 on our gear and we'll send it to you. If that's the case, well, you can get a whole lot more $99 Skeet Reese icons than you can $400 MGTIs. So maybe that is like a smart decision on the angler's choice. I don't know. I have no clue how these deals work. I've never done one. I never will do one. We've told you guys before, we don't work with any rod, reel, line, or bait companies in terms of sponsors. So I don't know how those deals are structured. But that could be a possibility, or it could just be that those guys like that reel, that, hey, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, it's $99, but it does what I need it to do. Mainly when I crank this handle here, fishing line comes in and goes on the spool. That's basically all I need my reel to do. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I've heard great things about those icon reels, again, especially in now day and age where $99 doesn't really get you much anymore. Unfortunately, I wish it did, but it doesn't. That might be something I look for later this year. When I go down to the Classic or something and I'm looking in these dudes' boats, might be interesting to keep my eye out and see who has a little bit more budget gear on the deck of their boat. That's a good suggestion. Okay, and our last question here today is from Jose, who says, I was wanting your input on a state or world record bass. I figured you could even make a fishing pole out of it, so here it goes. I'm genuinely curious as to how many people have actually caught a record fish, but decided not to report it to keep trophy chasers from blowing up the lake or river and just destroying the fishery. If it's a well-known bass lake or river that constantly puts out trophy fish, then I get claiming that title, but if you were to catch a state or world record bass from your local lake or spot on the river, would you run the risk of having everybody knowing where you caught that fish and potentially ruining the odds of getting another trophy? Or would you snap a quick photo and release it back into the water to keep that spot going and in turn, keeping it from becoming overfished by people just wanting a title? Food for thought, I guess. I'm in Nevada and listen to you on my way to and from work and love the style of the podcast you have created. Thanks, Jose. That is a good one. That's a thinker. You really hit me like kind of in the chest here because I am very much a like anti-spot burning, anti-blowing up your spots and other people's spots type of guy. So gut reaction, like visceral reactions, like, well, yeah, screw that. I'm not letting anybody come and, know that my lake or my river or my creek or whatever put out this trophy. But at the same point, we are anglers that are like out there trying to have success and trying to succeed. And I don't think there's any harm in turning in especially world record. I mean, no one's catching a world record around here, so that's not a problem. But like a state record, if I caught a state record smallmouth out of a river that I was fishing, yeah, I'd probably still turn it in as a state record. Now, I would love to be able to keep that fish alive. That's a caveat that I would like to talk about for sure. But yeah, I think I would still turn it in as a state record because all it does is just report the body of water that it came from. They're not going to know what riffle I was under or what stretch or anything like that. Like I could keep that a pretty good secret. So it's not like they're going to ruin my specific spot, but at the same time, you can bet your tail there's going to be a whole lot more traffic on that river once it hits the airwaves and once it hits public and all of that. So it's a tough thing to say. If it was like a different species, no, I wouldn't really care about it. If I caught like a state record, carp or catfish or sucker fish or, something silly like that, then no, I probably wouldn't report it because I just wouldn't care that much as a bass angler. But yeah, if I caught a state record largemouth or smallmouth or spotted bass or something, yeah, I think I would definitely turn it in. I wouldn't fault anybody for turning in a state record, even if it was someone that was in an area and I was really like salty that they caught it out of like our river. I would rather see that fish get the recognition it deserves, that angler get the recognition they deserve. Like, that's a once-in-a-lifetime feat that we're all out there chasing. And I wouldn't want to take that away from someone just because of my, negative attitude or wanting to, protect that fishery a little bit. That's a very tough question to answer because there's a lot of nuance to that. But I'm just trying to sit here and think, if my best friend caught a state record fish out of my favorite spot on the lake or river or something like that, would I get mad at him for turning it in? Absolutely not. I would be shouting from the rooftops how proud I was of my buddy for catching that and deserves every bit of recognition that he gets. So no, I don't think I would get too mad about it, but that's definitely a question that does not have an easy black and white answer for me, being a small water guy and having to be very protective about the water that we do fish. All right, everybody, that is our episode today. Thank you guys so much for listening. As a quick reminder, this is the last time I'm going to say it. This weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is the Columbus Fishing Expo. Come on out, hang out. I can't wait to see you all. I look forward to this every single year. You can go to nationalfishingexpos.com and use code TACKLETALK26. That's going to save you a couple bucks off your pre-purchase tickets. Skip the line, come on in. We will be in the second or third row on the right. When you come in, be sure to stop by the seminars. We have Friday at 4 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m., both on stage B in the back right corner. I've got crazy deals at the booth. We'll be selling all kinds of cool stuff. Come on over, say hey, hang out at the booth for a little bit. And can't tell you how excited I am to see you all this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Columbus Fishing Show. And for all of the rest of you listening to this that are not going to make it to the show, I will see you guys next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.